Denver Mayor Michael Hancock is continuing Denver Talks, the city's annual program on race and inclusivity, with a kickoff event this Saturday. Copies of poet Claudia Rankine's book, Citizen Lyric, will be distributed. Over 1,200 copies of that. Justine, this seems like an inventive way to address racism in a city as big as Denver. You have to, I guess, be creative in the situation. What do you think about this, especially going with a book on poetry?
I think this is great. As I've said before, I'm a Denver native. I'm born and raised here, so anytime that we open up dialogue in the city, I think is great. I think right now, racism is not as, in your face as it was decades ago, but there are a lot of microaggressions going on and things that are, systemic from a racist culture that we've went through. And I think that this is a good time to open up dialogue. I personally, with a lot of the change in the city in the last few weeks, have went out and started talking to neighbors, talking to people who have moved here, and really having some good discussions with people to kind of get on, on some common ground. And I think when we do that as a city and when we do that in communities, it really just helps move us forward.
Erica, what do you think about this inventive way, this inventive approach? I mean, we have to do something. I think people are probably in agreement on that. What about this Denver Talks approach?
Well, I certainly agree with Justine that anytime you can get people talking and get people thinking, and I think to ask people to read a work by a poet is a challenging thing that he's put out to people. And it's, I think it will benefit the people who participate in it. And I don't think that whether this is worthwhile or not depends on whether this solves everything. But at the same time, we're in a situation where you have an African-American mayor, an African-American police chief, and yet a lot of tension with activists over police use of force issues. You have a lot of tension around gentrification and development that has a racial element to it. And we're going to continue to really wrestle with these things, even if we have what feels like a good conversation.
Patty, you've seen a lot of things come and go as programs to attempt to have a conversation in Denver. Denver's changed quite a bit. Is this the right way to go about it?
It's not a bad way to go about it. Think about it. We used to, it's the same day that Columbus Day Parade is this year. Who's heard anything about the Columbus Day Parade in Denver? Who's heard anything about opposition to the Columbus Day Parade? So some issues in Denver do seem to be settled or at least calmed down a little, because you talk about racism and what happened to the Native Americans in this country. But it's also interesting. I'm glad he's doing it. I wish he hadn't gotten rid of the One Book, One Denver program a few years ago. Maybe they can bring it back and focus on books that have lead to a good discussion about important issues in town.
Michael, wrap it up for us. This is a discussion the mayor's trying to have within the city. The right way to go about it?
Yeah, I think it could be. I haven't read the book. He had a quote, Mayor Hancock, in the story that we read. It says, "Do not read this book and talk to someone you know, but read this book and talk to someone you don't know." And I think it's a good point. There are big political divides in our country, economic divides, rural, urban divides, and I think the more you talk to people, the more you live life with people, the better off things are. I think about it. I was a teacher and then was on the board of a school. It's a third white, a third black, a third Hispanic, all different kinds of economic situations. And what we do is we focus on learning. We focus on winning when we're on the athletic field, and we celebrate diversity, but we also highlight the commonalities that we have. And so I think if we look at it, the way that Bill Clinton said when he said, "There's nothing wrong with America that can't be cured by what is right with America," I think that gives us, a platform to have these tough discussions.